Sri Swami Ramdas was born in Kanhangad, India. As a young man, he understood that the only way to eternal peace is through the divine path of oneness with the Supreme Being. He thus began to devote his life solely to God. It was at this time that his father, also a great bhakta or worshipper of Lord Ram, taught him to chant the holy and all-powerful Ram mantra, Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Assuming the name Ramdas, meaning the servant of Ram, he soon after received darshan, or spiritual grace, from Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi. Following a retreat, Sri Swami Ramdas realized that the manifestation of Ram, or beloved God, is everywhere, within or without. Filled with never-ending bliss and joy, Sri Swami Ramdas went on to found the Ananda Ashram, with Mother Krishnabai as his deputy. The ashram became a spiritual center where people could experience and cultivate unconditional love and service. Sri Swami Ramdas's book, The Divine Life, is a compilation of more than 200 essays. These reflect the radiating insights gained through his inner understanding of the truth. We will now share with you selections from The Divine Life by Swami Ramdas. Divine Thought. In order to attain to the supreme blessedness of life, namely the realization of God, we have to surcharge our thought with the idea of God. God must take possession of our mind until our mind is no longer there as such, and God alone is. Until this is done, the aspirant must employ every means possible to control the mind and its activities so that the thought of God alone should rule in it. This thought must sink deep into the mind, transforming its fickle, restless, and impure nature into the very spirit of joy, purity, and peace. The world is hungering for this great ideal of happiness and peace. Ramdas's experience when he was flitting from village to village, from town to town, in the blessed land of saints, Maharashtra, was, he observed not only the intensity or keenness of spiritual hunger amongst thousands of people there who came to see him, but he also discovered that many of them, whatever the external circumstances, were drinking deep at the fountain of eternal joy. The chief condition needed for realizing this state is unceasing hunger or uninterrupted and unbroken aspiration for the immortal. The easiest means to make the mind dwell in the idea of God is to constantly reiterate mentally or vocally the name of God. Such a recitation of the name should of course be accompanied by implicit faith in the efficacy of the name, and intense love for the immortal ideal which the name represents, namely the Supreme Reality, who is absolute existence, consciousness, and bliss, and who is seated in the hearts of us all. When thus the mind is completely absorbed in the divine idea, a stage is reached when the mere individual or physical consciousness is transmuted into the universal or ever-blissful consciousness. This is all right. Everybody wishes to possess this hunger, this keen aspiration, which will bring him or her the experience of divinity. But the complaint is that such a state does not come even when one wishes for it. How then could this burning desire for the attainment of absolute bliss be generated? Just as an uneducated man or a poor man would evince an ardent wish to be a literate man or a rich man when he comes in association with a learned person or a wealthy person, so also when an ignorant, bound, and sorrow-stricken soul comes in contact with an illumined, liberated, and all-blissful person, the former by such contact is fired with a zeal to become also like the latter. Hence, the society of saints has been held as the most important factor in the spiritual evolution of the soul. The saints not only awaken the ignorant souls and create in them a thirst for self-realization, but also infuse into them by their blessings the needed spiritual strength to battle against the forces that confront the aspirant in his march towards this goal of supreme beatitude. In order to know our actual facial features, we have to look into the mirror. Similarly, if we wish to get a glimpse of our real and immortal life, we can do so only when we are in the company of saints. Saints are truly the redeemers of fallen souls. It is by their power alone the mind that runs in pursuit of transient pleasures can be made to concentrate its attention upon the eternal, changeless, and blissful indwelling reality. When thus the mind is permeated through and through with the imperishable idea of God, man attains the supreme goal of life. God realization does bring about not only the divinization of the internal life of man, but also all his external life and activities. He beholds all beings and things as the illumined expressions of the one all-pervading divinity. Satsang awakens the human soul and fills his thoughts with divine light and joy and grants him the knowledge of the immortal self, which in its turn confers upon the devotee the comprehensive knowledge of God in all his aspects. Divine Name. Divine love is attained through the realization of God, as dwelling in and pervading all the manifestations, thus granting the freed soul the bliss of universal vision. The difficulty that confronts the devotee in his path to the supreme goal of life is the restless nature of his mind. A mind purified and concentrated upon the great ideal enables the devotee to realize his oneness and union with him, and get the vision of him in all beings, creatures, and things. God realization is only for him who has so controlled his mind as to subdue the desires relating to the objects of the senses. Now, what is the unfailing, easy, and most potent practice by which the unruly mind can be brought under subjection? This is the singing of God's hallowed name. God is the beloved of the devotee's heart, and to attain him is the one great passion of his life. Constant taking of his name attunes his mind with him, who is at once the Lord of his heart and of the universe. The melodious music issuing from the sound of the name of his eternal beloved charms and lulls the mind and fills it with purity, peace, and bliss. In other words, it dissolves the mind in the blissful nectar of God's own immortal, all-pervading, and all-inclusive being. The repetition of the great name of the Lord, destroying the impure thoughts of the mind, which are the sole cause of its distraction, brings him absolute calmness and peace. Thus, the divine name transforms man from a mere tool, in the grip of the rising waves of passion, into a being full of the everlasting radiance, love, and joy of the Lord. Hence the power of God's name is infinite, since it can not only free the soul from the bondage of birth and death by making him realize his deathless and ever blissful existence, but can also bring about his perfect union with God. When the devotee is experiencing the joy of his close communion with and absorption in God, he becomes liberated from the individual sense or ego. In this condition, it is that the blessed devotee sees his beloved everywhere. He has now surrendered himself up in every aspect to the Supreme Lord and Controller of the whole universe. So God's all-powerful name takes the aspiring soul to the highest summit of the truth. What is required first is an absolute faith in the greatness and potency of the name. Given this faith, which comes only by the grace of the Lord, the devotee swiftly reaches his all-merciful feet. Indeed, the glory of the name is simply inexpressible, and its power simply unsurpassable. All success be to thee, O sweet and enchanting name, to control the mind. Therefore, there is no method, no sadhana, daily spiritual practice, so effective and easy as to repeat the glorious name. It stills the disturbed mind and plunges it into bliss.
Pigs are said to be smarter than dogs. I wonder if more people took the time to hang out and get to know a pig as a pet, would they ever be able to eat them again? Dana Allen, vegan.
Cherished viewers, it's been a pleasure to have your company for today's words of wisdom.